Coming up, we dive in on our week in review. What happened over the course of the last 7 days for the New Jersey Devils? Is Jack Hughes going to be all right? And will Timo Meier get his Devils legs underneath him? We dive in on it all coming up next. Yes, sir. It is, of course, DPL, the Devil's Puck Luck podcast, where you know that we are your hosts. Over here, Adam Armbrecht, over there, Danny McDonough, doing this darn thing all season long, Danny. And we're going to be diving in on what is a new theme for our show, right? Little week in review, talking about these last 7 days, what the Devils accomplished, who some of the standouts were. Got a big tip of the cap to a young center on this roster for sure. And then also, as I said at the top, asking some questions about if Jack Hughes is going to be all right. But before we dive in, Danny, how are you right now? Are you settled down? Or did your blood boil over as you did attend that Sunday night game at Prudential?
Yeah, it was frustrating, right? To come out and see the Devils play a great first period and then just crap the bed in the second and third. Kind of fell apart trying to play the Ducks game, that physical game that you know they're going to bring.
Of course.
And got away from what we do. And then we look sluggish, right? And we've struggled on the back-to-backs, the second half of them. So we got plenty more. We lead the league in back-to-back games this year. So we got plenty more to win.
And with that tease, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time, let's kick off the players of the week. Yeah, Devils of the week, including the week in review. Obviously, there's some standouts inside of this, and that's why we want to make sure we launch special graphics, big sounds, and hopefully, if you're listening just on the audio side of it, that little beat gets your blood percolating. We dive back in. Just 7 days ago, Danny, Sunday to Sunday, the Devils kicked that off after they had a 3-game winning streak, as we know, but we don't get to talk about that. It's outside of our week purview. They started with the Edmonton Oilers, a disgusting loss that they had there on the road. Then they went ahead and came home against the Boston Bruins, got the 2-1 win in overtime, a 6-3 big dominant win over the Blue Jackets. And then, as you were saying, a disappointing, lethargic, back-to-back, all of those things. 5-1. God, I almost forgot how bad it was. 5-1 loss at the hand of the Anaheim Ducks. When we think back to these last 4 games, what are your high-level takeaways, knowing that you lost to the Oilers, a very good team? You beat a very competitive team in the Boston Bruins. You got what you think is an easy chalk-up win against the Blue Jackets. And then really, I don't care back-to-back or otherwise, no excuses. You fall to Anaheim.
Yeah, we got to beat Anaheim, but we're going to throw that game out. And if you're looking at every game besides that game, we play a lot better.
Look at that one game, guys.
Yeah, that one game is gonna annoy a lot of Devils fans.
Of course.
But we go back to the Oilers game, right? It's a back-to-back game, second half of a back-to-back, where we didn't play poorly. You know, we played okay, and that game got away from us a little bit, but we still were okay structurally, defensively. So the Oilers were on fire. You know, they won, I think, 7 in a row at that point. So you chalk that up to you ran into a very tough Oilers team in Edmonton. You keep moving on, and then you beat a great Bruins team, right? Yeah, they're missing some key guys, but our defense stepped up. Our goaltending stepped up, which you love to see. And then, you know, against the Blue Jackets, we saw that offense come alive, which is what we need to see. You know, when we play teams that we know are lesser than us, not just on paper, but skill-wise, when they're not as good as us, we have to take advantage of that, and we did just that.
Now, we'll go ahead and we'll give a little tip of the cap here to Jack Hughes in terms of our players of the week. I actually don't know if he should be included in this list, but because he had the hat trick there against the Blue Jackets, 3 goals in that game, obviously 3 points. He was +2 on the plus-minus. Did that on just 3 shots, by the way. But over the course of this game, over the course of this, stretch, you got to remember, had 5 shots against Edmonton, didn't get anything in between the pipes there. He had 4 shots against the Anaheim Ducks, did not get anything between the pipes there, and also took 4 penalty minutes as well. So when we talk about players of the week, I don't know. It's an evolving segment for us. So there's a world where it's just about, for better or worse, these are the players of the week. Jack gets one really good nod there, and I think we can just touch on this Anaheim loss where you are the assistant captain on this team. I get you being fired up. I get you feel like maybe there's some penalties that should have been called the other way, whatever the case may be. Jack Hughes got a little bit unhinged over the course of that game and really took himself and I think also the Devils kind of out of their game, out of their style, and bought in lock stock to what Anaheim wanted to do, right? Get them out of their game, get them to buy into physical play, get some chippiness going, and before you knew it, that game was lost.
Yeah, they were irritated after they didn't score a goal too in the first period. You know, you
Yep.
dominated the Ducks. Gibson was absolutely on fire, who left this game in the third period because he was sick. Absolutely on fire, you know, and it sucks, but it's going to happen a lot in hockey. You know, you're going to play great periods and you're not going to score goals and you have to keep at it. And we did not keep at it. And Jack Hughes did become unhinged. Listen, I'm good with the fire. I'm okay with the first time it happening. You getting emotional, you know, you taking a cross-check penalty, whatever. Move on, though. You know, you can't take another silly penalty toward the end of the game when Anaheim was starting to tilt the ice. And you saw it with a lot of our players. A lot of our players were going after that physical play and forgetting that we're a team that's going to generate our offense with our speed. You know, we could be physical against the boards. You know, we have players that are going to do that. But when we get away from our speed, we're going to lose 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I found that to be one of the more disappointing aspects of it. And I said this all season long, and you know what? It was funny too because I will say in that last game against the Ducks, it was one of the first times where, not that I didn't understand where you were coming from, it was one of the first ones where I'm like, well, somebody's got to hit somebody, right? You mentioned Kevin Bahl, right? Like, okay, ding, ding. Like, it's not necessarily the battle that I want to be walking into, but somebody has to step into that. And it's a little bit unfortunate that the Devils, is again, because I don't believe they need to have enforcers on this team. I don't think they need to have bruisers, guys that are going to go scrap, but you do need to have somebody that's at least willing. So from that standpoint, I give a full tip of the helmet to Kevin Bahl for saying, like, I am walking in to a losing battle, but that's what it takes. You get the respect to your teammates. And then there's other little chippy moments inside of this as well that certainly had this one unravel from that standpoint. Let's flip it over here now. Let's go positive coming out of the back of this week because there was a nice stat that you had when it came to one Mikey McLeod. He has been one of the more consistent players this season. I think that we talk about a guy, we said all these other players on this roster, contract extensions, next deals, what's it going to look like? Mikey McLeod's making a very strong case that he's a much better player than the line he currently plays on. And it just really comes down to the hierarchy of the Devils that puts him on one of the bottom 2 pairings when it comes to that center position. What have you liked about him over this past week? And this is a little bit of a nod to his season overall.
Yeah, he leads the league now in face-off percentage wins. You know, he is absolutely incredible, and he's a playmaker. He is going to give you 110% every single shift.
110%. Yes.
He creates chances. You know, and the fourth line has been rolling the last 3 games, and Bastian's been playing well. I know that you've been a little bit of a stickler with Bastian, but it's good to see that he's really forechecking hard and he's getting to the front of the net. And Lazar's doing his thing. He's been doing his thing all year, and I've said it from the jump. When this team is completely healthy and Noshek eventually does come back, you don't take Lazar out of the lineup. You know, you're taking Bastian out of the lineup if you have to take one person out of the lineup, because I think Lazar has really made himself a staple in what the Devils need to bring physical-wise against the boards and that forechecking. And Mikey McLeod is the leader of that group. You know, he's on the fourth line as a center, but on a lot of teams, he's going to be a third-line center. You know, he doesn't have the offensive capability, obviously, that Jack does, that Nico does. But think about how strong we are down the middle of the ice when we're healthy. Right? When we lose Jack and Nico, obviously it's a different story. But with Jack,
not healthy, not so good. Healthy, very good.
Yeah. With Jack, Nico, Holla, I don't think Mercer should be at center, and McLeod being the centers, this team is stacked. You know, our 4 centers are very good.
On Mikey McLeod here, he currently, by the way, man, it's just fascinating to go ahead and remind everybody, the last 2 years before this season, he had combined 272 hits as a bottom line center for the New Jersey Devils. Has 50 so far this year, has 9 block shots. He has 13 takeaways. And then also to go along with, you mentioned 64.7 face-off win percentage right now. That is building. He has gotten better. Now, his rookie year, he only played 21 games, only played 12 in the following season. But you going back these last now 4 seasons, including so far this year, 51.5, 57.3, 60.6, 64.7 this year. He's gone to the circle. 253 is the face-off wins that he has already on the year, 138 face-off losses. I mean, we talked about this before. He's the guy that they go, okay, they're going to bring him in. You were mentioning it, I think, on one of the power plays, or it was on going back 2 games ago, overtime. Brought in McLeod for an offensive zone face-off, said he'll go in, let him win it, and then you pull him off and you bring in your other sharpshooters, right? Like you having a player that he's more than just a quote specialty guy, but having a guy that can be that dominant in that phase of the game is really critical for this team. So I just can't say enough positive about Mikey McLeod, and we will continue, though, to have the conversation on the other side about a couple other players in this past week that have not necessarily endeared themselves to the podcast. Big questions being asked all over the New Jersey Devils fan base, and we'll get into all that in just one moment after, though, we tell you about our good friends over at DraftKings. My goodness, it's DraftKings. You know that you can bet on all the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. You download the app right now and use promo code
THPN.
New customers get $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on hockey. That's promo code
THPN.
Oh, it's the only DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. A lot of great games to go look out over there. And obviously, they have NFL going on as the season winds down. They're going to have your NBA coverage as well. Any sport you can think of, they've got your back. You know that bonus bets, though, they will expire 168 hours after issuance. And if you have a gambling problem, you can call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hills Casino Resort. 21 age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Our friends to the north. Bonus bets, again, they expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gambling resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2023. All rights, they are reserved. And what I reserve is a little bit of speculation and potential concern around one Timo Meier. Here's my belief. You can tell me how you feel about it. A couple games ago in this week in review, I'd say he looked pretty good in that one game, some slow shots, some slow movement, and then he builds up, gets a lot of pucks on net. Helped me win a couple of bucks, as a matter of fact, over on DraftKings. My assumption is that Timo Meier is playing hurt. Do we need to say anything more than that, or do you feel like that would be an excuse? Because I really do feel like it's impossible to see how he performed last year, to look at his career overall, going back to the Sharks, and think that this is a healthy Timo Meier right now.
I just don't want to hear, like, at the end of the season, he's getting a surgery he needed, that basically was an injury that occurred, a couple weeks ago, which you see happen a lot in sports, which sucks. But
especially in hockey, by the way, like hockey more than many others, it's like, oh, you'll gut it out. You go, right. But 60% of you ends up being quite damaging, actually, the overall team play.
There's two sides to this, right? There's the Timo, I don't want to say haters. There's the Timo people that just didn't want to sign Timo to the long-term deal because they felt that he didn't fit in with this team, with the speed. I thought he did. You thought he did. You thought he was great for the front of the net. His physicality is what the Devils needed. He's not doing what Timo does. He's not generating that speed, and he's not getting to the dirty parts of the ice where he's going to score goals. So he's not being what he really is meant to be for this team. He's trying to do certain things that aren't just going to work for him. He's not, you see the speed. He just doesn't have the speed the way he usually has the speed. Coming down the ice, down the side ice and shooting from, the top of the circle. It's slow. We saw he had a lot of shots against Boston. He did well against Boston, and generated some scoring chances, but he just wasn't the same Timo. So even when we thought he had a good game, and I think you and I can agree that the Boston game, he had a good game. He wasn't the same player. So I do agree with you. I think he's playing through an injury, and then it becomes, do you sit him? Do you get him to sit down if he is injured, put him back on the injury report, and give him another 5 to 7 games to recover if he is struggling through something that maybe it's an issue with conditioning? This injury he's struggling with his conditioning a little bit, on the longer shifts. It's tough, and then people are going to also say, and you've heard it too, fans and people across the NHL, maybe he's just not on the right lines. Maybe he hasn't been given the opportunity to get the right chemistry with certain guys.
Right.
But it's tough. I think you can see that it's tough when he is not the same player that we saw last year, when he was on San Jose and when we acquired him from San Jose. So I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be the Timo that we thought he was, that we signed. It's just frustrating right now.
Yeah, that's fine to say. It's fine to come out of, and we're saying this week, and just say we got a little glimmer, right? We got a little bit of a glimmer of what Timo can be. And again, I did say this going back over the course of this season, as Lindy Ruff looks to find the right combinations. I think if we say, well, maybe Timo is a little bit injured, and then the other part of it is he also is just, to me, not a guy that can get shuffled around as easily as you can with some other players, right? Guys that are a little more dynamic with the puck on their stick, it's going to be easier. Say, okay, we'll figure out our spacing. We'll figure out my turn, your turn. Timo needs to kind of know, when do I need to anchor in front of the net? When do I need to create that traffic, right? How do I blend with some of these guys? And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not we end up with a little bit of a slower line being the better line for Timo. We mentioned with Palat sometimes, right? Here, some of the things that we've seen from Lindy in recent games. We'll keep an eye on that. That's what it comes down to when it comes to Timo. One other more positive, or give me one more positive guy, because now we'll do 2 and 2. Who's your other positive coming out of this last week? Before we just talk about the goaltending, and obviously I want to highlight Akira Schmid, but who is one more positive for you that maybe has been under the microscope a little bit over the start of the season?
Jesper Bratt. Jesper Bratt played absolutely incredible this last week. You know, he's all over the ice. He's a playmaker. And to your point about Timo maybe needing to find that consistency on a line, hats off to Bratt. Bratt's been shuffled around. He's had different line mates, and he has performed on each of the lines that he's been on. So, you know, he's creating plays, which, you know, Bratter's going to do. Yes, he was a little bit streaky. You know, he had maybe like a week or two where it seemed like he was a little bit off and he was kind of pressing and forcing some passes. But with this type of team, Jesper Bratt's going to continue to do that, right? He's going to continue to try and make those incredible passes to our pure goal scorers like Jack Hughes, right?
Yep.
Like Alex.
And you talk about the assist, obviously 3 assists there coming in that Blue Jackets game with all the goals that were getting scored there, and the hat trick, obviously, for Jack Hughes, and then also had an assist picked up there in the Boston Bruins game. He scored now going back to Sunday, and then if we can add in the one there on that Saturday night, scored a goal there as well. But you're seeing him, just to your point, getting it into the goal makers, into the playmakers. He's one of them too. But I think you're seeing this little transition for his game of saying, okay, and I also need to make sure that I facilitate, because otherwise, I think this is universal. We get too stuck on, well, your turn. And then I'll go later, but now you go, right? Jack Hughes, you take the puck, you run wild, you take on 3 defensemen. We know he can do that. That's great. But you also want to have it be a little more balanced, where because everyone's a threat, then you have to really pay attention in that final zone there. Bratt's had a really good week for himself. I agree with you there. That, my friends, will close out our players of the week. You can dance at home when you're listening to this guy. In the bar, feel free. Put your hair down.
It's the devil's dancing. It's the devil's dancing on the.
That's what. This is why you got to get us over on YouTube as well, because this type of graphics, right? This type of work, we're doing it. We're doing it all season long. Now, that closes out the players of the week. It closes out our week in review. 2 and 2, not the best. I think mostly because we feel like you left a very winnable game out there against the Ducks, even if it was a back-to-back. And that's going to be a consistent theme, as Danny mentioned. 1-5-1 on these back-to-backs, and there's going to be more coming down the pike. The other thing for me then, though, is taking a look. Let's talk about the month of December for one Akira Schmid as we look in between the pipes to close out today's episode. Now, back on December 1st, he took on the San Jose Sharks. It was not pretty. 5.3 goals against, 1 goal against, 3 goals against, 3 goals against, 4 goals against. What do you look at when you now have gotten a bigger sample size? I advocated for this. He played on Sunday. He played again on 16th. And then because of the illness with Vitek, he also played again on Sunday. The results have not been great. And because we feel like the defense has been getting better, although the game against the Ducks gave you some very fun sample sizes on that end of the ice, are we at the point now, because you and I have tried to just push back a little bit against this full-blown panic, package everybody up, trade for a goaltender, go get Gibson. We all thought maybe he was coming over in the middle of the game. We didn't know. Do you feel like now we're getting to sample territory where neither of these goaltenders is really offering a level of consistency that we need?
I think we need a goalie. I mean, if I'm going to be very straightforward with this, I think we need a goalie. Do I think Akira is going to be great? Yeah, I think he's young, and I think he's learning on the fly. I think against the Ducks, he could have saved a couple of those pucks. I think he knows it too. He is what I kind of expected him to be, coming back and having some good starts, but then being inconsistent, you know, in a couple games. And it's not easy it's not easy to play back-to-backs. You know, it's just not. Those second half of those back-to-backs, they're tough. And this is hockey. You know, anybody can lose to anybody. Anybody can beat anybody. You know, you look at a team like the Bruins. The Bruins lost to Columbus. You know, you look at a team like the Sharks. After they beat us, they rattled off a couple wins, and they were starting to beat, you know, top teams in the NHL. So those back-to-backs are tough. And it's tough for goalies too. And I don't even know if Akira, this is an excuse, and I shouldn't give an excuse here, but because Vitek was scratched probably late, with that illness and physically not able to play, we don't know how much preparation he had as thinking he was going in as the starter. And maybe he was a little gassed in that game and he wasn't consistent with where he wanted to be positionally and making some saves. Maybe it's tough. Back-to-backs are tough. Those second half of those back-to-backs, but it's not an excuse. Got to beat a team like the Ducks, and we know that.
Yeah, and I think I've been right on a lot of young guys, and then Akira, I think, is one of the examples where it's unfortunate that he maybe is getting pushed a little bit sooner than he should be here. You would have preferred, I think, to have Vitek be the steady hand. Akira fills in, gets some spot starts, looks good, and maybe there still could have been this transitional period over the course of the season. Instead, it's now almost like the playoffs last year. We're in a bad spot. Akira, we need you to give us a spark. Now, he came and he did that for you, right? And then you got to the Kane series and you kind of got a little dose of reality. I think that's what I'm feeling now, like in this season, where I'm like, well, now all of a sudden I'm putting all this pressure on him to be the guy, because now it feels like he needs to be the starter, not the fill-in. That's going to be, I think, an interesting problem to watch here over the course of the next, say, 10 to 15 games. We know the deadline will come up here. And then really what's going to come down to is what's the price point, right? And how far are the Devils and Fitz going to be willing to go to acquire a goaltender to help improve this team? I'll leave this cliffhanger for you to kind of speculate on. Do you think that it's more likely that the Devils go, quote, all in for a goaltender, or that they just go for a marginal gain, someone that's having a bounce back season, someone that's not regarded as maybe a long-term solution, where they go, let's just bring in another body, someone that can maybe get hot here, and we'll go ahead and ride that hand for this season and maybe wait to reassess what we need to do ultimately at that position?
It's so tough, right? I believe it or not, I think these next 4 games are going to be telling of that, right? If we go 1-3 in these next 4 games, I think we're going to pull the trigger on something pretty quickly. But if we go 3-1, we're in a very different position. The Flyers are only, I think, 4 points ahead of us. Correct me if I'm wrong, and they're in second in the division, in the Metro, and we play them tomorrow. We play them Tuesday night. So it's hard for me to have any type of panic right now. I'm at the point where, like, hey, let's calm down. I think we're going to be all right. In a perfect world, Adam, in a perfect world, I would not trade one of our goaltenders. I would go get Dixon for a second, and they're going to want a prospect. But the question becomes, is that price going to be too high? And I think Fitz is not playing the short game. I think he's playing the long game. And I think that we are more likely not to make any move with goaltending than to make a move. And I know that's a lot of fans are going to get upset by that, but this is about the long game. This is not about the short game.
You didn't sign a bunch of players to 8-year extensions this offseason thinking we need to go win the cup right now. Doesn't mean we don't have aspirations. Doesn't mean we don't want to see this team get themselves into the right position. Just a note here, as you said, playing the Flyers coming up next. The Devils do have a game in hand on them. It is the Flyers on 37 points, the Devils on 33 points with that game in hand. 16-12-1. Philly is 17-10-3. So as you say, it's all right there in front of you, right? The Rangers, though they're still sitting there at the top of the Metro, they've come down to earth a little bit. They've taken some lumps along the way here as well. So 43 points, 33 points of the Devils. It's a 10-point spread that seems like an enormous amount in some regards. And then in other ways, it's nothing at all. Because guess what? It's only 4 points from where the Devils sit all the way up to where the Philadelphia Flyers currently sit at 37 points right now, right? So everything is very bunched up. And in a lot of ways, I'll just be honest, I really feel like the reality check here is that this division we always knew was competitive. I think that the bottom has come up a little bit on this division. I think the top maybe took some tiny steps back here, ourselves, the Canes as well. And now you're going to have, man, this is going to be fireworks. When we talk about the last 30 games of the season, I think we're going to see a lot of action inside of this division, across the league as well. But that's what I think we're building towards, which is exciting. And it's also going to make for some real, lump in the throat, hard to get through games. And we'll see if Danny looks back at this Anaheim Ducks loss and goes, oh, that was the problem. That was the Achilles heel of this. But it's going to make for some really fun hockey in a different way. I thought we were going to be talking about 2 or 3 teams, the Devils among them at the top. Now we're going to talk about 5 teams. And we're going to talk about 5 teams for the next month plus for sure here, depending on how these teams run.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the Flyers are for real. The Flyers are not a team to take lightly. Torts is having that team play phenomenally defensively, and the goaltending has been great. It's not going to be easy tomorrow. And it goes back to what we just did against the Ducks. Do not fall into the trap of their physical play. You just cannot. You could be physical. You could be strong on the boards, but you need to continue to press and to continue to fly through the neutral zone, which we can do, and expose it. You know they're going to play the trap. You know that they're going to have 2 men up on their blue line at all times and clog up the neutral zone. Stick to your game. Stick to your game. You know, don't fall for that trap, Adam. You know it's going to happen.
Just because the Ducks lost 12 out of 13 before they beat the Devils, don't take that to heart, because guess what? On the back-to-back, the Ducks beat the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
So they stuck it to the Devils again, because they were like, we also can win games on back-to-backs. Nevertheless, we'll come back in after that Flyers matchup. We'll talk about what we see from it. I think Danny's right. This next week is going to be big. Hopefully you enjoy some players of the week in review process that we're going to be going through. And to make sure you're in on all of that great action, you get over to YouTube at Devil's Puck Look, subscribe, turn on the alerts, get in the conversation, leave comments. We love to mix it up with everybody. Over on Twitter, you get us at Danny the Face, at Adam Armbrecht, at NJ Devils PL, and then on TikTok, on Snapchat, on Instagram, and on Facebook at
Devil's Puck Club.
Get us out the door, Danny.
It's Timo time tomorrow. It's time for him to step up, and I really feel like he's going to make it. Nice, make it happen. I'm feeling good about it. Timo time tomorrow. Score a damn goal.
This is the few episodes in a row now where Danny's going Timo time. So the clock, at some point, this clock just breaks and you got to throw it in the dumpster. We'll be back.